In the quiet coastal town of Whitford, tucked between cliffs and fog-covered shores, there once lived a Victorian girl named Annabel Crane, a girl who became the center of one of the strangest stories the town has ever known. What made Annabel so unsettling wasn't her appearance or her behavior, but the fact that she never seemed to grow up. For nearly 30 years, people swore she looked exactly the same. Small, delicate, almost porcelain-like, with the same soft curls and the same light footsteps that echoed faintly wherever she went. Nobody could explain why time seemed to avoid her. Annabel was born in 1874 to Jonathan and Clara Crane, a wealthy couple known for their strict routines and quiet lifestyle. They weren't social and rarely attended gatherings. They seemed content living behind the iron gates of their sprawling estate, a place the townspeople often referred to as the House of Stillness. And according to old diaries and journals, Annabel grew up within that silence, wandering the immaculately kept halls with a doll in hand, humming faint lullabies to herself. The family rarely allowed visitors, but on the rare occasions when neighbors visited, they described Annabel as unnervingly calm. She spoke softly, always in complete sentences, and never laughed. Even at 6 years old, she had a kind of eerie composure that didn't match her age. People dismissed it as strict Victorian upbringing, but as the years passed, something far stranger began to unfold. By the time Annabel should have been 10 years old, she still looked 6. By the time she should have been 13, she still appeared no older than a small child clinging to her doll. At first, people assumed it was merely slow growth or a medical condition. But as time continued, and the same small face appeared behind the iron gate year after year, the whispers began. Some believed it was illness. Others believed the Cranes were hiding something unnatural inside their home. The truth began to reveal itself the day a governess named Miss Eleanor Ashford was hired by the Cranes. Eleanor came from London and was known for being observant, firm, and unafraid of difficult children. She arrived expecting to teach a young girl who simply needed guidance. But the moment she met Annabel, a cold shiver ran through her. Annabel's eyes were kind but distant, like she was seeing something behind Eleanor rather than looking at her directly. Her voice was soft, melodic, and unchanging, as though every sentence she spoke had been practiced. Eleanor stayed at the Crane estate for nearly 6 months, and later described the time as the most unsettling period of her life. She claimed the house was always too quiet, as if sound itself hesitated to enter. Annabel kept to her room most days, sitting at a small wooden table drawing endless patterns of circles, spirals, and looping lines that never connected. Eleanor tried to teach her reading and numbers, but Annabel seemed stuck in the same level of understanding, neither improving nor regressing. On one stormy night, Eleanor heard something that would haunt her forever. She had passed by Annabel's door, expecting to hear the soft hum of lullabies that she often sang to herself. But instead she heard 2 voices. One was Annabel's, the other was deeper, older, and whispering so softly that Eleanor couldn't make out the words. She froze outside the door, her heart racing, her breath shaking. After several minutes of silence, she finally pushed the door open. Annabel was alone, sitting on the floor, staring at the wall, the same lullaby slipping quietly from her lips as if nothing had happened. Eleanor left the Cranes shortly after, insisting the house was wrong in ways she couldn't explain. The family dismissed her claims, calling her overly imaginative, but soon more people would witness strange things themselves. As the years passed, Annabel's appearance still did not change. Children who grew up and became adults saw her still standing at the gate, the same height, the same curls, the same emotionless expression. They tried speaking to her, but Annabel only repeated short phrases, always polite, always distant. It was as if she were stuck in a loop she couldn't break out of. One year during the town's spring festival, Annabelle's father brought her into the main square for the first time in nearly a decade. The crowd fell silent when she stepped into view. She looked exactly as she had 15 years earlier, and her father, noticeably older and more frail, held her hand with a grip that seemed more desperate than protective. When people approached, Annabelle smiled politely, but her smile didn't reach her eyes. Those eyes remained as empty and glassy as a doll's. A local doctor, Dr. Harrison, approached Jonathan Crane privately that day, offering to examine Annabelle. Jonathan refused, but after months of curiosity and concern, the town council pressured the family. Eventually, they agreed to a private examination inside the Crane home. What happened during that visit became one of the most disturbing stories the town ever recorded. According to Dr. Harrison's notes, Annabelle did not respond to tests in any normal way. Her heartbeat was steady, her reflexes slow but not abnormal. But what disturbed him most was the way she watched him, without blinking, without shifting, as if studying him with an awareness that didn't match her childlike form. When he tapped her knee with a reflex hammer, she tilted her head and said, "You don't need to do that," with a calmness that made his skin crawl. But the most haunting part came when he asked her a simple question identifying shapes on a piece of paper. Instead of answering, Annabelle turned to her mother and said in that same soft voice, "He doesn't understand the patterns." Clara Crane burst into tears. Jonathan abruptly ended the visit. After several more encounters, Dr. Harrison wrote a private report claiming Annabelle's condition was beyond medical explanation. He suggested she should be removed from the home for further study. The Cranes never allowed him to return. By the late 1890s, rumors about the Crane estate grew darker. People walking past reported seeing Annabelle in the window at odd hours, staring outward without moving for long stretches of time. Some claimed she was seen standing in different rooms of the house despite nobody seeing her walk between them. A few residents even insisted they heard humming near the gate at night, long after the family had gone to bed. Then, one night in 1899, everything changed. A powerful storm swept through Whitford, with violent winds and crashing waves that shook the cliffs. The next morning, the Crane estate was found in ruins. The front doors were thrown open, windows shattered, and the house was filled with debris. But the most alarming discovery was that the entire Crane family had disappeared. Jonathan, Clara, and Annabelle, gone without a trace. The only clue was Annabelle's small wooden doll, found sitting upright on the staircase, untouched amid the destruction. The doll's face, once calm and plain, now had a faint smile carved. Deeper than before, a detail that made the investigators step back in fear. Search teams combed the coast for weeks, but no bodies were ever found. Some believed the family fled during the storm. Others whispered darker theories, claiming the Cranes were never meant to leave the house they had kept so secret. Years later, long after the ruins were abandoned, people began reporting strange sightings. Travelers walking the coastal road at dusk claimed they saw a small girl standing on the remains of the stone steps, holding a doll and humming softly. They described her as pale, unmoving, and wearing clothing from a century earlier. When they approached, she vanished into the fog. One fisherman swore he saw her on the cliff edge one night, staring out at the sea. When he called out, she turned her head slowly, revealing eyes that glowed faintly in the moonlight. He ran without looking back. The most unnerving account came from a group of children exploring the area. They found fresh footprints leading into the ruins, small prints, as if made by a child. When they followed them inside, they heard faint humming coming from one of the collapsed rooms. As they approached, the humming stopped, and in the dust near the far wall they found a circle drawn with small, careful strokes, the same looping spirals Annabelle had drawn her entire life. Today, Whitford keeps the story alive quietly, almost reluctantly. Locals avoid the cliffside after sunset, and parents warn their children not to wander near the ruins. Some say Annabelle never grew up because she was never meant to. Others believe the Cranes discovered something, a force, a presence, a pattern, that granted their daughter eternal stillness at a terrible cost. But every so often, when the fog thickens and the waves crash hard against the cliffs, travelers claim to hear humming carried on the wind. A soft child-like melody, echoing faintly through the ruins. And those who follow the sound swear they see a small figure, standing in the shadows, holding a doll with a carved smile. A girl who has not aged for over a century. A girl who still wanders the silence. A girl the town of Whitford will never forget.